Welcome to the Helping Writers Become Authors podcast. I'm KM Weiland, and I am here to take you deep with story theory, writing techniques, and the incredible wisdom of story. I believe story is the greatest power on this earth, and that as writers, we carry the torch of wielding that power with responsibility, passion, and skill. There's no such thing as just a story. Today, it is my honor and my purpose to help you write your best story, astound the world, and maybe change your life. Hello and welcome. You are listening to Season 17, Episode 8. Today's episode is sponsored by Damanza.com. As one of the leading names in book cover design right now, they have designed most of my book covers, and they are currently offering free book cover reviews. So whether you're about to publish or you're just curious to know how your cover stacks up, this review is a no-brainer. This will give you a fresh, informed perspective that offers crucial insight into how your book cover performs in today's competitive market. So don't miss this chance to make your book unforgettable. It's totally free, and all you have to do is visit damanza.com/review/WBA to get started. That's damanza.com/review/WBA. And now, welcome to this week's episode, How Writers Can Use the 4 Stages of Knowing in Character Arcs. Great character arcs are built on transformation, and one of the most powerful frameworks for understanding this journey is the 4 stages of knowing. These stages map a character's growth through initiation to enlightenment to integration in a way that feels deeply satisfying to readers. Why? Because it is yet another way in which the shape of story mirrors the patterns of real life. Once you can see how plot structure challenges characters to grow, sometimes successfully, sometimes not, you can then more consciously craft resonant character arcs. Attributed to many sources, the 4 stages of knowing have long been one of my favorite tools for charting growth, and often for combating unrealistic desires for immediate perfection. Only recently did it occur to me these 4 stages map perfectly onto the 4 quadrants of a classic story arc. Now, I discuss plot structure in depth elsewhere on my site and in this podcast, and in my books, Structuring Your Novel and Next Level Plot Structure. But if you're unfamiliar, no worries, keep listening. And if you have been listening to this podcast for any length of time, you already know there are endless parallels between story structure and character arc and models of human development. The 4 stages of knowing originate from a well-known concept in learning and personal growth. It is often paraphrased as, you don't know what you don't know, then you know what you don't know, next you don't know what you know, and finally you know what you know. This idea has been widely used in psychology, education, and self-improvement to describe the path from ignorance to mastery. It illustrates how awareness and understanding evolve, often through experience and struggle. So it's no surprise that in storytelling, these stages align perfectly with the protagonist's emotional and intellectual growth, making it a valuable tool for crafting and double-checking meaningful arcs. So today, let's look at some of the parallels. We'll start with the first act, not knowing that you don't know. The first stage, not knowing that you don't know, indicates unconscious ignorance. You're ignorant of your ignorance. There is a sense of innocence and often a seemingly harmless hubris associated with this stage. This can feel like confidence, complacency, or simply an absence of curiosity. Without the knowledge that there's more to learn, you have no reason to question what you think you know. It's impossible to be aware of the gaps in your knowledge until you first encounter a catalyst that challenges your current understanding. Only when something disrupts the seeming wholeness of your perspective can the journey toward deeper awareness begin. Now, in story structure, the purpose and the symbolic intent of the first act perfectly align with this state of seemingly blissful ignorance. The first act represents a story's normal world, in which the character may feel safe, familiar, content, or at least complacent. Even if the character dislikes aspects of the normal world, it is still a lifestyle that functions reasonably well. However, despite this basic functionality, the normal world may be very broken indeed, as in Jane Eyre. In other stories, the character may be utterly satisfied with the normal world, as in Toy Story. And in still others, the character may be dissatisfied with aspects of the normal world, but see no possible way of changing anything, as in Star Wars: A New Hope. Whatever the case, the character is stuck, hemmed in by the status quo. This stage of not knowing represents the thematic lie the character believes, which creates the foundation of all types of character arcs. This lie is a limited perspective characters hold about themselves or their world. The story to come will offer them the opportunity to challenge that perspective and grow beyond it. Now, this stage of not knowing they don't know ends with the story's first major plot point, the first plot point. This moment responds to the call to adventure that initially challenged the character's worldview. A sliver of doubt is introduced into the complacency of their cohesive worldview. Perhaps all is not as it has always seemed. Not only does this present the shocking possibility of their own ignorance, it also shines a light on areas of their lifestyles that lack functionality. If a character was previously aware of dysfunction, this moment turns the dial up until it becomes clear something must change. Even if characters adamantly wish to maintain their formerly ignorant mindsets, from here on, that will become increasingly difficult as they enter initiation. Characters will either bravely begin a slow and difficult journey into growth and expansion, or they will succumb to cowardice and resist the truth in increasingly dysfunctional ways. In the second stage, knowing that you don't know, awareness begins to dawn. Now that you've encountered something that reveals a gap in your understanding, for the first time you begin to recognize the limitations of what you know. And depending on the gap created by this cognitive dissonance, i.e. the gap between lie and truth, this stage can be uncomfortable and even overwhelming. Even small challenges to one's perspective and worldview create destabilization and uncertainty. However, this stage also represents the beginning of real learning. Once you've recognized you don't know, the door opens upon vast possibilities for growth and deeper understanding. In story structure, the first half of the second act represents a stage of reaction, as the character struggles to respond to a new status quo without yet having all the necessary knowledge, skills, or tools. This is a stage described by Terry Pratchett's quote, "Wisdom comes from experience. Experience is often the result of a lack of wisdom." This is a stage of fumbling around in the dark. The only advantage characters have at this point is at least they know it's dark, ergo they better find a match. Previously, they didn't even understand that much. So even though the character's unquestioning belief in the lie has now been irrevocably challenged, this is a stage in which the character is still very much identified with the lie. Because the new way of being, the truth, is not yet clear, the character will understandably continue trying to return to the old ways. By now, however, there is no going back. Determined ignorance or a retroactive adherence to the lie will prove less and less effective, effectively punishing the character for any lack of progression. Characters moving toward the truth will learn to embrace the necessity and the opportunity of growth. They will, eventually, learn from their mistakes, humbly accept their ignorance, and begin gaining the knowledge, skills, tools, and experience they require in order to move forward. Now, this may be ideological, as it is in the movie Promised Land, or it may be practical, as in the movie Castaway. Characters may willingly embrace the change, as in Harry Potter, or they may struggle against the hard knocks, as in Toy Story. In stories in which the character will fail to fully progress through the 4 stages into positive growth, they will begin inventing stronger and more dangerous lies in order to maintain the original lie, as in Hamlet. Halfway through the story and the stages of growth, the character will encounter the second plot point, or the midpoint, which represents an all-important moment of truth. Although this moment does not represent complete enlightenment, it does provide the character clarity that was so far lacking. I like to put it like this. This is where the character recognizes and embraces the truth, but does not yet fully reject the lie. In other words, characters do not yet understand that to step fully into this new way of being, they must first be willing to fully relinquish the old. At this point, they think they can still have the best of both worlds. So what's important here is that the character is offered the opportunity to begin shifting out of ignorance into the beginnings of competence. Now, in the third stage, not knowing that you know, this new knowledge is becoming second nature, but you haven't yet fully realized or integrated your own growth. Up to now, you've absorbed lessons, internalized skills, and navigated challenges successfully, but you have not yet shifted your own identification with your ignorance. You may still feel uncertain, questioning whether you truly understand. This stage is often marked by imposter syndrome as you doubt your competence despite clear evidence of your growth. It's a transitional phase in which competence is building even if you don't fully see it yet. Another way to look at the 4 stages is to see them as this journey from unconsciousness to consciousness. And at the 3rd stage, you are becoming consciously competent in this new way of being. But because these conscious skills have not fully integrated into your deepest self, they may still feel awkward, like a suit of clothes a size too big. And yet, you are wearing the clothes. So although you may feel like you're faking it, more and more, you're genuinely making it. In story structure, the second half of the second act contrasts the reaction of the first half as the character moves into a more proactive and effective state of action. Characters are increasingly able to not just react to situations, but to choose, based on their increasing stash of experience, how they want to respond, and even to initiate actions that now require responses from others. So thanks to their growing understanding of themselves and the world, they are now able to make better choices, for which they will be increasingly rewarded. However, mistakes still happen for the primary reason that characters have not fully integrated their new truths. You'll remember at the midpoint, they had yet to fully let go of their old ways of being. Now, even though they are becoming increasingly effective in their new mastery, they are still tripping over the remnants of their old ignorance. Eventually, true mastery will require them to fully embrace their new roles, represented by the truth, which requires them to fully relinquish the old, as represented by the lie. If characters are to succeed in completing a successful growth arc, this is where they will become increasingly aware of the effects of their remaining pockets of ignorance or apathy. They will prove willing to continue their journey toward the truth, sometimes at great cost, as in Jane Eyre. This is your character's last chance to embrace the opportunities offered them. If they fail, they will spiral into even more destructive methods for maintaining the limitations of their initial perspectives, as in What Happened to Baby Jane. The third plot point marks the final major catalyst in a character's arc. So here, the character will either succeed or fail in the vital task of fully integrating new knowledge and experiences. Either way, this is a crucible. The old ways must burn away to make room for the new. This is not just true on a practical level, for example, a new job, etc., but on the egoic level of identity. However much better the new way of being may objectively be, it is never easy to surrender ego identities. Sometimes even just accepting one's own prowess can feel dangerous to the self. At the third plot point, characters are given the opportunity, perhaps a once-in-a-lifetime chance, to step up. They've been learning all along. They have, in essence, been given many gifts by dint of their own effort and courage. And now all the chips are on the table. Will they prove capable of fully integrating and owning both the blessings and the responsibilities of everything they've learned? In the final stage, knowing that you know, awareness and confidence align. You no longer question your understanding, you trust it. What once felt uncertain is now second nature, allowing you to apply your new knowledge with clarity and purpose. This is the stage of mastery, in which you recognize how far you've come and use what you've learned with intention. It's the culmination of growth, the point at which experience transforms into wisdom. This is the turning point where one's conscious understanding becomes so fully embodied as to become subconscious. There is no longer a struggle to understand or implement knowledge. There is only right instinct and the ability to act on it. You no longer have to puzzle out how best to do something. You just know. And you trust this knowledge because by now you have gained enough context to understand you're not missing anything important. You can see the entire battlefield and command your troops accordingly. In a story, the third act proves your character's arc. Either your characters will succeed in transitioning into broader and more effective ways of being, or they will fail. Either they will fully embrace the story's thematic truth, or they will cling ever tighter to the lie, even though it will by now have proven itself not just ineffective, but destructive. Although certain revelations are often left until the story's climax, all of the groundwork will culminate with the third plot point. In many ways, the third act and its climax is simply the proving ground for what has come before. This is where your audience gets to see not just if your character will succeed, but how. How will your characters use what they have learned or not? What choices will they make? And what actions will they take now that they have fully integrated a new way of being? In positive change arcs, characters will respond in notably more effective ways than they were capable of in the beginning. Often, the change will be even more significant as the character is shown to fully embody an entirely new identity, as in Iron Man. In negative change arcs, characters will have failed the test. They will have stagnated and probably regressed in their attempts to avoid confronting deeper truths and the challenge to grow. Here, the audience will experience the full consequences of the character's failure, as in The Searchers. The 4 stages of knowing in character arcs is a handy, intuitive guide for shaping compelling stories that mirror the universal process of learning and transformation. So whether your characters courageously struggle toward growth or cravenly resist it until the very end, these stages can provide a roadmap for ensuring their arcs feel both meaningful and inevitable. By weaving this psychological truth into your storytelling, you not only strengthen your characters, but also invite your audience into a journey that mirrors their own paths toward greater self-awareness and mastery. So that brings us to the end of today's episode. But if you'd like to learn more about how story structure mirrors real-life transformation, my most recent book, Next Level Plot Structure, goes beyond the basic beat sheet of plot points to explore the deeper symbolism of how the foundational beats of storytelling reveal the way we grow, change, and face challenges in the real world. So if you want to craft stories that feel deeply meaningful while still delivering a tightly woven plot, this book will show you how. It's available in paperback and ebook on all major retailers. And the audiobook is coming soon. I'm still waiting for Amazon to approve it. In the meantime, I hope you'll stop by my site at helpingwritersbecomeauthors.com and join the conversation on this topic. How have you used the 4 stages of knowing in character arcs to shape your protagonist's transformation? And that brings us to the end of this episode of Helping Writers Become Authors. I hope you'll stop by the site for a full transcript of this episode and to join in the conversation in the comments. Tune in for next week's episode, where we'll continue to explore all things writing and storytelling. If you'd like to support the podcast, it always means a ton when you take a moment to leave a quick rating or review on Apple Podcast, Amazon Music, or Spotify. To stay updated on all the latest content I create for you, the best way is to join my mailing list at helpingwritersbecomeauthors.com/mailing list. You'll also immediately gain access to lots of free resources, including my books, Crafting Unforgettable Characters and 5 Secrets of Story Structure. For real-time connection with me, more writing advice, and behind-the-scenes glimpses, follow me on Instagram at authorkmwyland. A heartfelt thank you to each one of you for your support and enthusiasm, and especially those of you who support my work on patreon.com/kmwyland. You help make my site, this podcast, and so many other resources available to writers everywhere. So until next week, keep writing, keep dreaming, and most importantly, keep being true to your stories. Thank you for being part of Helping Writers Become Authors.